Good morning. Welcome to Fusion. In the summer of 2017, our senior leaders for the Air Force came together and they set 5 strategic priorities. Priority number 3, drive innovation to secure our future. AFWERX is a direct result of these 5 strategic priorities, and specifically number 3, as you can see from our charter that was signed by the Secretary of the Air Force. And we were asked, how are you going to drive innovation? So we went out and we did our research. And I offer to you 4 foundational pillars that could be useful not only for you in your life, but for your organization, and also to answer the question, how is AFWERX out there? What is driving us that helps us drive innovation? Principle number 1, sometimes you need to go to a new environment to be inspired and bring back a new idea. Example, surfing did not become popular in the United States until the return of the veterans from World War II, because they had been out to the Polynesian islands and they were like, that's really interesting. I wonder if I can take that idea and make it work in my environment. So that is what our veterans found, but how long had surfing actually existed before we discovered it? In your mind, the answer? 3,400 years, right? That a concept exists for 3,400 years, but it's not until you go out and find it that you can actually make use of it. So in 2 different rooms today, we have 100 concepts that are out there associated with multi-domain operations, artificial intelligence technologies, things that we can do to secure our nation's future, and we'll have the experts speak more to why MDO is so important to securing our nation's future. But we have those experts available for you. And if that is not exotic enough, you're in Las Vegas. Whatever you do tonight, you can certainly find an exotic environment. Next advancement, though. People go out to the coast and they say, that's pretty cool, but I don't have an ocean where I live. What can I do? What can I do? What can I? Yes, right? It took about 5 years for this concept, once it's out there, so there's something about information, awareness, watching it spread. There's something about that where people are like, hey, I could do that in my environment. So within 5 years, in the 1950s, you started to see the Lords of Dogtown. And faster than you can say, pop and ollie, people are out there doing their thing on their boards. Pretty cool. But then, lastly, what do you do if you're from the Great North, Michigander myself? And you say, you know, there's a lot of seasons out there where, I really can't find an empty swimming pool. Only took another 10 years, and truly they believe it started in Michigan, that snowboarding came around. So what we have here is an example of what history suggests. And what history suggests is, if people are given a creative environment and a safe place to experiment with new ideas, amazing innovations can happen. Principle number 1, taking from the old, applying it to the new, 100 old and new out there for you. Number 2, what if you take an existing concept and you kind of go new with it? I really enjoy, as a Cub Scout den leader, the philosophies that my 3rd graders bring to every den meeting. We usually start with the first 5 minutes of brain-opening exercises, and if you think about it, and I'll give you a little science in a moment, these prankster things at an early age actually prime your brain for being more creative when you're older. Example, this one's been around a while, so feel free, audience participation always welcomed. What do you get when you cross a pig with a karate expert? Pork chop. Thank you. So, right, that's the warm-up. Everybody gets that. Yay, congratulations, cool points to you. No, let's take it to a real level. The adults are in the room now. Level 2. What do you get when you cross a cement truck with a chicken? Yeah, that's a little better. All right, excellent. The answer is a bricklayer. And it's like that. But now let's go through the science. What did we just do? If you're going to create a new idea from existing ideas, the first thing you have to do is loosen up. Literally, you have these concept spheres in your mind, these fault lines of your mind within the cognitive sciences where all of these ideas develop. And what you want to do is let these things slip together so that you can start to view things differently, these overlapping idea spheres. For example, you say bricklayer, and you can time it. It's 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds, and then people are like, right? Because what's going on is at that very moment, your brain is taking the chicken lays eggs. Cement truck, cement makes brick. And then suddenly it comes together and you're like, aha, new synapses firing, new concepts developed, and it all comes together. So creativity, again, we have 100 concepts in these 2 rooms for you to go to. Existing concept at table A, existing concept at table B. This is your opportunity to say, we need this for our warfighters. How can I combine this? How can I start a conversation? How can I advance these prototypes? It goes well beyond the Cub Scout buffoonery, right? Somebody at some time said, wow, I sure would like if I could make that music thing combine with that phone thing, and then if I can put a computer in it. As Gary Kasparov wrote in his most recent book on deep thinking, the chess engine that you can get on your app now is usually stronger than the IBM Deep Blue machine that beat Gary Kasparov in 1997. In your pocket. So the pace and the speed of acceleration of technology, how can you look at the different spheres and bring them together and say, there's something new here. Let's try and build it together. Principle number 3. Yeah, that's all great, Beam, but is innovation, I don't know, is it just the next big buzzword, here today, gone tomorrow? This is a really deep concept, aka my fellow Americans. This is a really deep concept to my Western democracy capitalistic citizens. This is a really deep concept. On the left, you have life expectancy. And you can see some of the projections, maybe a little far, but some of the projections say all the way back to 10,000 BC, the best that we could piece together the artifacts says that on the y-axis, life expectancy, unless you were fortunate king, pharaoh, well-resourced warlord, you had a big chance that you were going to live in squalor. Disease, famine, war, not enough material resources to be able to keep your life alive. Pretty horrible. Around the 1700s, end of the 1700s, beginning of the 1800s, you see this explosion, this climb on the life expectancy. What's going on? Correlation, no one can perfectly cause it, but a really interesting coincidence going on here along our right-hand side. This is the Great British Empire. And as far back as they could kind of piece together some data on gross domestic product, or what you might think of as commercial output, commercial productivity, what a nation is capable of producing. Interestingly, right around the late 1700s, probably once they got rid of those pesky colonies, but right around the 1700s, end of the 1700s, the Age of Enlightenment, Adam Smith comes out with The Wealth of Nations. Alexis de Tocqueville in the early 1800s comes out with Democracy in America and the concept of enlightened self-interest. That if we can give people a reason to be productive and we can let them take a little bit of the profits, we're going to see some amazing innovations. And it looks like he got it right? So this is not a random moment. You can take courses on developmental worlds, and you will see those 3 concepts up there from a national level when your children ask you, hey, why is it the United States seems to have a little more material prosperity than many of the other nations out there? You got 3 things working in your system. Number 1, you have cultivated people. Not every nation is able to provide an education to their students or to their population and then move on to secondary. Many nations have war in their younger years, right? So coming up with a cultivated, skilled people and then giving them the liberty to pursue what they want, This is not something, although we may take it as a given from how we grew up, this is not a common standard. Item number 2 in the system, property rights. If somebody worked that darn hard, can't they protect it? You know thievery is rampant out there, whether it's cyber theft or somebody taking your R&D designs, right? So in America, we've got the court system, we've got the enforcement system. There's a reason that if you try and build your own business, you should be protected, and America is dedicated to that. Number 3, moral capital markets. If you make a contract, by God, we're going to enforce it. And at some point, somebody usually gets a little uptight about, oh, those lawyers. If it weren't for the lawyers in the court systems, we would not have the total system that we have. So sometimes that little extra step, necessary and useful. But again, whether we're talking about surfing or whether we're talking about the history of the world that suggests that if you give people a cultivated environment where they can be creative, amazing innovations will happen, to include raising the standards of living in much of the world. So what kind of standards are we trying to go after today? Multi-domain operations. If you're new to the concept, the basic idea might be like this. In this room, you see hundreds of very dedicated warfighters coming together to create a common picture. It kind of begins at the unclassified levels of one set of desks is, what does the satellite see? Okay, I need to paint that over the battle space. This is where the buildings are. Somebody else is the, hey, here come the Air Force planes. Okay, I need to paint that because the satellite was made by a different company than the planes were made by, then the tanks were made by, then the ships were made by, then the sub was made by. So suddenly we have to have all these people doing a lot of functions that need to occur in order to make a smooth, common operating picture of the battle space occur. But the time has arrived where those concepts are now coming together, and much like the superphone, we now have artificial intelligence capabilities that can help us advance for the next level of a battlefield, because the next level of battlefield includes that cyber and the electromagnetic domains out there, the spectrums. And there's going to be thousands of things occurring when that great battle gets ready to come. And if we're not prepared for it, and if we have to move at the pace of human typing, human shouting, and human pointing and clicking, and we can't find a way to automate more of it, we are at risk. And so we were proud, as AFWERX, with our partners in DefenseWorks, we were proud to be asked to pursue an unclassified experiment in MDO technologies to try and show what the art of the possible is out there. And we have 100 concepts out there for people to go after today. Is it a moonshot? We don't think so. We believe, based on what we've seen in the last 6 months of tech scouting, that absolutely we can find those 4 stages, that the artificial intelligence exists now where we can take in sensors from satellites, planes, ships, boats, subs, and we can put it all on one common cloud-based battlefield structure. And that when we see all of that, when we make our decisions, we're going to be able to disseminate out that information all over again without needing the telephone or the typewriter or the computer. It's there. We just need to go build it. Moonshot. This weekend, the 50th anniversary of an American landing on the moon. An American system that built the first person on the moon, right? Is it a moonshot? Prior to Apollo 11, there were more than 20 Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions that had to occur. So the one thing I wouldn't want to see today, tell yourself, remind yourself, tell your children, hey, my idea doesn't seem big enough. Right? Move the ball forward, because it took over 20 missions before we got to Apollo 11. So don't let I don't know, this doesn't seem like a very grand question. I'm embarrassed to ask it. You have 100 motivated, innovative, entrepreneur, researchers, geniuses out there at these tables. They're ready for the conversation. Advance the ball. Make it a moonshot. Build up the little missions. Make it the big mission. Principle number 4, the belief in persistence. The belief in persistence. I am admittedly biased on this data. I am entering my 11th marathon season this year. And so I enjoy human performance, studying how people get things done. The 4-minute mile. The concept approximately, we'll argue with the historians during social hour, the concept of a mile was approximately of the Roman era. So we got about 2,000 years of the concept of this distance, and then with time, and a 4-minute mile. And it really, before we could record it and say officially with confidence, yes, somebody can break the 4-minute mile, that took us almost 2,000 years. May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister out there doing it. So we break the threshold. How long does it take until the second human is like, I got this, in your mind? About 6 weeks, right? So you sit there and you're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be the first. I'm no Roger Bannister. It's amazing how many people are of the John Landy mindset that, if somebody else can do it, well, I can do it. Be the first. This is that time. This is that environment. This is that opportunity. Just go ask the question. Try and move the ball down the field. Try and create that ultimate moonshot. Principle number 4. Edison knew a few things about making stuff, right? 1% is the inspiration. 99% is the follow-through, the hard work, right? Because it's the grand idea. We've seen it. Bring the sphere together, but then you got to go out and work it. We have an environment here where you can work it, build the connections, and set yourself up. So we got the 1% waiting for you. Go find it. Then, just because we are actually named the Fusion event, let's dust off our nuclear physics book for just a second. The basic fusion process, and we'll use hydrogen for our example, goes back to Einstein. Oh, that's right, it's an idea, a leading idea. It goes back to Einstein. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And the idea was when you bring in these masses of hydrogen and they go through a fusion process, on the outside, their mass is actually a little bit smaller, and with that smaller mass, well, you have to make up for it with energy, because E equals mc squared, so there has to be a balance of mass and energy. So the same idea that applies to a fusion is, I can't tell you, with regard to a nuclear fusion, which exact atom is going to bond with which exact atom and create the fusion and change out the energy, but I know in probability there's going to be a great effect. What I can tell you about today's fusion event is, I can't tell you which person's going to have that conversation, who's going to create the moonshot, who's going to move the ball down a field of view, but we know in probability, based upon the best practices of lean startup, design thinking, Silicon Valley, based upon these 4 principles that AFWERX has researched out and put together into a system, we know that good things are going to happen. That there's going to be a next generation technology. And because of what you learn and can take back and grow with us, there can be a next generation of innovation, because we need to become more agile, particularly in the field of multi-domain operations. But if you have questions about AFWERX, how did you get after that agility? Find somebody in a t-shirt. If today is not the day when we can go and do a deep dive, we'll write your name down. We'll have the conversation. We're here to build not only technologies, but to build out those relationships in that ecosystem so that we can secure our nation's future. And so, when we were asked, AFWERX, what are you going to be? Our response has consistently been, after about, I'd say 5 months worth of research, what is AFWERX? AFWERX is a fusion of capabilities. Who? Because it's about relationships. AFWERX is a fusion of capabilities who connect innovators and accelerate results for Air Force culture and for Air Force technology to make us more agile. And when we become more agile, that means more rapid with more options, right? You have agility if you can move fast and you can move in unpredictable ways. Multi-domain operations is that idea of how can we bring overwhelming force through multiple different options to create an overwhelming effect. And this is a day when we can advance it during these next 2 days. So those are our 4 principles. Very excited to welcome you here today. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being a part of securing our nation's future. I hope you combine the old with the new. I hope that you persist, and I hope that you make history. Thank you for coming out here today.